We will now turn to Amelia Barili from the Spanish and Portuguese departments here at UC Berkeley, and her talk is entitled Building Nurturing Communities, Service Learning Spanish Language and Culture Courses.
Thank you. So I want to thank the UC for organizing this panel on this subject, and also for the support that it has given many of us, included in doing research about the languages that will engage our students completely with the texts that they are reading in the courses, and also to take a kind of experience that will be a lifelong learning experience. So I would like to refer to some of the research that I did in the last BSc fellowship and how it connects with service learning. For example, I was able to do in the research of the BSc research on the latest findings in cognitive science and in neurobiology, and all of them point to the fact that optimal learning happens when the heart and the brain are engaged. The same in cognitive science, they are talking about cultivating the mind. What is the mind? It's not something out there, it's an embodied process of minding, learning, and it happens when there is self-reflection, and also when there is an exchange between the learner and their social environment. So when they are using their intrapersonal and interpersonal intelligence, like Howard Gardner talks about. John Schumann, linguist, in his book, The Neurobiology of Affect in Language Learning, talks about that affect, he defines it as the movement towards or away learning a language, and that's determined by the motivation of the students. And then that motivation, of course, is very much related to the needs of the students and to their experiences that they have in their lives. And so service learning is particularly useful because it responds many of the needs, responds to many of the needs that the students have. Like, for example, we know in our language courses that the students want to have more confidence in using the language. They want to use it not only as a subject matter, but they would like to express through it. And sometimes they are very afraid about the level of proficiency that they could have in using it. So I'm going to talk especially about the Spanish 102A, which is a course that I have been honing for the last 10 years, in which I have been using service learning. And I'm going to define also how we understand service learning in that course, and how I built the course. So one of the problems that the 102A, the students that come to me have taken all the levels of Spanish, and the course is a course on advanced grammar and composition. And the students already have looked at all the grammar rules, and they can speak with different degrees of proficiency, but they are very concerned about speaking in public and just using the language only. When they engage in service learning experiences, for example, with the immigrants or in bilingual schools with Latino children, because they are using the language to communicate directly with the immigrants that they are serving or with the Latino children, then they forget about whether they are speaking perfectly or not. And it's again a win-win situation, because, for example, in East Bay Sanctuary is an organization that serves immigrants from all over the world, but especially from Central America. And my students there translate documents, they take the stories that the clients talk about their own lives, that is part of the political preparation for the political asylum. They translate documents, they do research on country conditions, they answer the phone. And in all these cases, the clients of East Bay Sanctuary, they know that if the students wouldn't be there, many of those cases could not be processed. So it doesn't matter if the student has to repeat several times the question, and if they have to, not have maybe the perfect Spanish like they would like to have before they open their mouths. but because they are already put in the situation of trying to help someone else and needing to implement and use the language, they just do it. And they also get motivated to learn more, expand their vocabulary and learn more the proper forms because they are using it for documents that will be supervised by the people in this sanctuary. But there is a whole motivation that happens with this affect, with this putting a face to subjects that they are studying in the classroom through text, and then they actually see the people that are directly related to many of these experiences. So the way I designed the course, it's called, the central theme is My Communities and I, and it's around issues of education, multiculturalism, and immigration. And so the students work with two different sites, 3 different sites, where 2 of them are about education. They will be working with Latino children in bilingual schools, and they are like mentors for the children. They help them with the reading and writing. And in East Sanctuary, they work with the immigrants. The text, I mean, when you are doing a service learning course in the more traditional way of thinking of service learning, it's not just service in the sense that you don't just go to the community to do some service, and it's not just learning in the sense of, well, we are learning certain things in the classroom and then somehow they may be related to the service. But first, we choose organizations that are going to provide the kind of experience for the student where he or she can reflect directly on the text that we have been discussing class. And of course, the texts are especially selected so that they are related to that experience. So, for example, we read in 102A text by Pablo Neruda on El Pueblo, and we read the speech that Garcia Marquez gave when he accepted the Nobel Prize, a speech called La Soledad de América Latina, in which Garcia Marquez talks about the need for solidarity to overcome the alienation of America Latina or the loneliness of America Latina in the context of all the big nations. We read the Government 2, which is testimonial writing from a Guatemalan Indian that also got the Nobel Prize and whose story got to be known because an anthropologist picked up the story and then published the recounting of this Guatemalan indigenous person, and then the story got to be known, and eventually she received support, and that was like a sign from the big nations to stop the massacres in Guatemala. So my students are moved to reflect about the power that comes from people working together, sometimes from different levels of education, and how it's possible to use what they know, in this case the students know, to help the community. So on the one hand, we have the potential of our students. We really have amazing students that already know quite a bit about the subject they are learning, in this case the language. And then we have community with great needs, and so the idea would be to try to connect these, identify that you were saying in San Jose, the needs of the community, and then bringing together the students with the community, because one of the needs that they have, one of those needs that will motivate the students for learning, dedicating more time to learn, is the need to feel that they can find practical ways of using what they are learning in the classroom, right? So on the one hand, they need to feel more confidence in using the language and be in situations where they know they will not be judged and where they feel that they are using the language to help others. On the other hand, they need to put a face to the text, because once they actually meet these Guatemalan indigenous people also in East Sanctuary or the children or whatever, they start reflecting on the text in a different way. They become much more engaged with the culture, not as another subject matter, but as something that they can represent. They have met the people that come from the same culture where the texts were written. These are some of the ideas about the course, and I would like to tell you some more, but first, let me show you some of what the director of the place where the students work says and what the students say about the way this kind of work helps them to connect not only with what they are learning in the course and in our department, but also with courses that they are taking perhaps in other departments. I don't know how to do this. Totally not technological. So this is a little video that we did about the experiences of the students. It's on YouTube. If you would like to see the whole video, it's called Building Nurturing Communities, a Berkeley Story. And I'm just going to play a little part of it. Okay. That they are handling. So my students assist the staff of East Bay Sanctuary.
We simply could not do this without all the undergrads. And I would say from the Spanish departments is like 60 or 70 a year who come through our program. Now some of them put in a few hours a week, and others kind of get hooked and come in until I have to kick them out.
Working here for a few years was the best practice I ever had for Spanish. I think even better practice than going and studying abroad, just because you had to always make sure that you were using the right words and being precise. I wish I could have kept that up in law school. I'm losing some of the progress I made, but it's been great for my Spanish working here.
Social welfare classes are different than working here at East Bay Sanctuary because they tend to be more theoretical, more conceptual. So this is the place where I applied that learning, where I could really utilize what I learned in classes to talk to people here, to learn more about the approach towards immigration and how immigration actually affects people versus reading it in a textbook. So definitely made it more personal.
It was good to have both the academic experience of learning and then the hands-on experience of meeting real people and hearing how different historical events have affected their lives even to this day.
I was a Latin American studies major in college, and so I had sort of had that academic experience, but then coming to an office where you're working with immigrants from all over the world, but primarily from Latin America, it's sort of the other side of that education that I never would have been able to get in sort of my Latin American studies classes. And it's something that made me personally realize also how important it was for me to sort of keep going and keep pushing myself, and eventually I ended up in law school to work on immigrant rights issues.
What happens sometimes at the university is that the students get too worried about the A, and I find that spend 4 years pursuing an A is a loss of time because it doesn't stick, the learning doesn't stick so much in their minds and hearts because it's mainly theoretical, and it's also removed from their direct experience of the subject.
Yes.
And so I was looking for a kind of method that would help them to learn but also to remember and to come out of the university not only with whatever grade they got because of the work they did in the other part of the course that's more academic, but also with some experience of the difference that they can make. And when I found service learning, which is a method that is not only about service and is not only about learning. So there are certain subjects that we are discussing in class like immigration or identity. Then they are relating the subject that they are learning through readings and discussions in class, etc., with their direct experience by meeting the immigrants and using the Spanish one-on-one.
Y también necesitamos un examen médico. So, ¿eso tiene o todavía no?
No, todavía no.
Todavía no. Okay, so tengo una lista de...
In a very compassionate and wonderful, loving way, our students of the classes reach out to everybody, no matter who they are, and just learn a whole lot about the human condition.
The first person I remember talking to, and I don't remember his name, but he was sitting waiting for someone to help him, and I still didn't really know what to do, but I sat down just to talk to him. And he told me that he hadn't seen his daughter for 3 years, that she had just been born when he left to come to the U.S. And that just really shocked me, trying to imagine what that would be like, and not having that option to go see her or for the rest of his family to come here. So those were the kind of things that really affected me and got me thinking and wanting to understand more about immigration, more about what the history of these countries were that people were coming here.
My personal...
Okay, I think the students say it much better than I. We have been working with the community for 10 years, and something important in these kinds of exchanges is that the professor also gets to the organization, and then there is a continuous dialogue with them to hone the different components that make the experience of the students more rich. Like, for example, since they are working there, answering phones and receiving the clients and helping to direct them to different people in the organization, etc. We have a series of videos along all about the political asylum process, so that when the students go there, they can see, they can understand better the whole functioning of the organization in which they are working, and they eventually can assume more responsibilities, not only with the clients, they also translate for the students involved call, and some of them get more and more involved and eventually find careers within related fields to this, like, for example, immigration. Two of the people that are shown here not only went also to Latin America, but they also follow careers in to work with indigenous people, but also follow careers in law, etc. Yes, I think that the text, the activities, I think I will leave it open to questions later. The bit with the bilingual schools, many of the students that are interested in education and in the process of learning, when they go and they act as tutors with the Latino children as bilingual in bilingual schools, they also start to realize how some of the programs that we see at the level of the university start much early in the schools, and it's wonderful to see the reflections that students that work helping the Latino children in the schools and then relating that to the text, or the reflections that the students that work with the immigrants do about their own experience and about texts that we have in the course, show the development of their critical thinking, uniting points and experiences that before would have been just some more theory about what we are reading, and in this case is more enriched by their experience there. And they also start relating to the language in a different way. They take bigger risks in their composition. They don't just try to worry so much about the A that then they will repeat certain formulaic ways of not risking making more complicated constructions in the way they express or in the way they are arguing things, but they put more dedication because they are more engaged with the subject, and they also take bigger risks in their writing. So I definitely think that it's a methodology that has its own values as a method, as an academic method, not as something like, okay, let's do a separate service learning course so that they have some experience of service in the community. But it has great power in the way